Hello everyone, it's Benny, and today we're going to talk about loading textures with the Lightweight Java Game Library. Now, the Lightweight Java Game Library doesn't really come with a good way of loading textures built in. You can always try loading textures manually if you're good with I/O or you just feel up to a challenge, but that's not really the best way to do it. So, the Lightweight Java Game Library can work with this other library called the SlickUtil library. And the SlickUtil library has really good ways of loading and storing textures, so that will make our lives with textures just a whole bunch easier. So that's what we're going to use. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, first off, you of course need the SlickUtil library. So to get that, first open the web browser of your choice and go to LWJGL.org, and that should take you to this page right here. Now, to get the SlickUtil library, you go to the wiki, which is right here on the side. So I'm just going to open that in a new tab, and here we are on the wiki. Now, if you notice, under Helper Libraries, there's a link called SlickUtil Library. If you go here, this page has a download link for the SlickUtil library. It says the latest SlickUtil jar and slickutil.zip can be found here, and it has a link. Just click this link, wait for it to load, and then you can download. And actually, that's the source code, isn't it? No, okay. Well, there's slickutil.jar. I'm sorry, I'm doubting myself. Forgive me. And that's what you want to download. So just download that and save. And that will get you the SlickUtil file. Aside from that, you'll also want to download this Lightweight Java Game Library.jar. So just click this and download. And then once you have them downloaded, just put them in some place where you're going to know where they are. For example, I already have them. I have mine in my Java folder, Java to SlickUtil to lib, and this is where I keep them. I have a couple more here, but you only need these two right here. That's all you need. And you put them wherever you want, as long as you remember where it is. So, that's how you set this up. So, now let's go back to NetBeans. And let's add the library to our project. So open up the project and go to Libraries, and right-click. Select Add Library, and it's going to load. And now, we haven't created this one yet, unless you already have it installed. So, if you don't have it created yet, just click Create, call it whatever. I'm going to call it SlickUtil, and just click OK. And then, now I'm going to add some jars. So, you will want to go to the folder where you have it. So mine is under Program Files. Where's Program Files? There we are. To Java, to SlickUtil, lib, and it'll be these two. That's all I'm going to have. So just add those. Click OK. File slickutil.xml. That's fine. And now we have SlickUtil. So just click Add Library. And now it should be added to your libraries. So, now that our project has a SlickUtil library, we can load textures. So, what this new library has just given us is a class called the Texture Loader class. And this class is going to, big surprise, load textures for us. So I'm just gonna create a method somewhere. I'm not really sure where I want to put it. I'll just put it above the game loop. And it's just going to be, why not? Public static void load texture. And actually, it's not going to be void because, of course, we're going to need to return a texture from this. So we're going to return texture, which is also a class that this library has given us. And I'll just do Control-Shift-I, and that should import it. And make sure the one you're importing is org.newdawn.slick.opengl.texture, not the one from the Space Invaders example. No idea where that one's coming from. Actually, I do, but not the point. Okay, so now we have a method that loads textures. Now, the way I like to set this up, I like to have just a string called key, and this is going to be the name of the texture. And what we're going to do with this texture is... And I'm sorry, I was interrupted. Okay, so now back to implementing this method. Now all we're going to do in this method, we're not going to do that much, we're just going to call the texture loader class. We're going to load a file with the name of this string using the texture loader. So the texture loader is a static class, so we don't have to instantiate it. So we can just call texture loader dot, the method is called getTexture. So first off, we need the format. That's in the form of a string. Essentially, in quotes, you're putting in the file extension. So in here you put PNG, JPG, TGA, whatever file format it's in. In this case, my texture is a JPEG, so I'm just going to put in JPG. And then, here, we're going to input the file stream. If you've never worked with I/O before, this might seem a little bit cryptic to you, but I'm going to assume you know at least the basics of file I/O. So here we just create a new file stream. So I'm going to create a new file input stream, excuse me. And I'm going to wait for the Control-Shift-I thing to come up. Yes, Control-Shift-I. And that should have imported the java.io.file input stream. Okay. And this is where we're going to do the file loading. Or rather, this is what the texture loader is going to use to load the file. We're not going to actually load the file manually. This texture loader class and its lovely getTexture methods going to do all the hard work for us. So, in the file input stream, it takes a single parameter as its constructor, and that is a file. So that's another class, so we're going to create a new file, and this takes in the path, the location of the file. Now, I'm going to input a location, and I'll sort of explain what this works in a bit, but for now, this is where I'm going to do the location. But theoretically, you can put it anywhere on your hard drive. It can be any file, but, again, this is what I'm going to do, and I'll explain it in a bit. So, it'll be res/, so that's going to be the folder name, and then we're going to add the key to it. And that is what our file is going to be. Now, this still requires the extension, so to the file name, I'm going to add the extension .jpeg, since I'm using a JPEG. I'm going to put a semicolon at the end of the line, and do Control-Shift-I to import file. And now, all we need to do now is just return this, because this is going to give us a texture. Now, we still have an error, because this requires to be in a try-catch thing, because it's I/O, and I/O always requires try-catch. So, I'm just going to I'm going to Alt-Enter, and I'm just going to surround statement with try-catch. And we're still getting an error. Why are we getting an error now? Because we still have yet another error that can go wrong. So I'm going to surround that with a try-and-catch, and wow, this is messy. So, okay. I'm going to hope this fixes it, because... Okay, no, it doesn't. Okay, fair enough. I'll just do this. And, good God, this is getting kind of messy. Okay. Oh, nope. There. Now, hopefully we're going to get this working a little bit better now. Okay, we're going to clean up this try-catch method, because right now it's not working. And I think I just have to get rid of this one, and that should fix it. I could be wrong there, so let's see what happens. Still getting error, missing return statement. Okay, that's a different error, okay. At least our try-catch statement is working now. I don't know why NetBeans went all screwball there, but whatever. I'll go with it. Now, lastly, we just need some case for if it can't load for some reason, if the try-catch fails. Even though this code should never be executed, we need it there anyway, so here I'm just going to return null. And that should complete our loading texture method. So now we have a way of loading textures using this slightly cryptic file system, but don't worry, again, I'm going to explain that when we actually get to loading the texture. Actually, I'm going to explain that right now. So right now, this file thing right here, this path is starting from the directory of our project. So if I navigate to my project directory, so I'm in the project directory, it should be just under wherever NetBeans project is to the project name. So it's starting from here. Now it's looking in a folder called res, so I'm going to create a new folder called res, and it should be looking in there. Now it's going to look for our file name in here, and it's going to look for that .jpeg. Now, on my desktop, I have a file called wood.png. This is a texture I'm going to load. I'll put this up for download in the description. And before anyone says this, because I'm pretty sure after some time someone's going to try this and then it's going to cause problems. This texture is not mine. I got it from a tutorial on moddb.com. And therefore, I don't hold the permissions for it. So don't go saying that I gave you permission to use it. I'm not giving you permission to use this in your game. If you want to use this for anything, you're going to have to talk it out with the guy who created it. So, just throwing that out there. Not that you'd want to use it anyways, because it's not the best texture. But, use this at your own risk. I'm not going to be legally responsible for anything you do with this texture. So, with that out of the way, now that this wood.png is in our res folder, we should be able to load it. So, that's what we're going to do right here. So, I'm going to create a texture. It's going to be called wood, and it's going to be equal to load texture, the method we just created. So we're going to load this in. And if our method worked correctly, all we should have to put in here is wood, the texture name. And that should load the texture. So, that's the first step in getting textures loaded. At least now we have a texture loaded, even though it's not doing anything just yet. Now, there's a couple things we need to do in order to draw with this texture. The first thing we need to do is we need to make sure the texture is a square. So if I go back to the folder with the texture in it, and I look, it's 512 by 512. Since 512 and 512 are equal, that means it's a square, because that means the width and height are the same. Therefore, it has to be a square. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it has to be an exponent of 2. So the dimensions, that is. So 512 is an exponent of 2. So is 32, 16, 8, 64, 128, 256, 1024, 512, 2048. It has to be an exponent of 2. That's because OpenGL can only draw with textures that are exponents of 2. So if it's not an exponent of 2, that's probably a good reason why your texture is not working properly. And there. So, if your texture meets all that criteria, then you can start drawing with it. So, first thing you have to do is something called binding the texture. This will essentially mean OpenGL is drawing with the texture. So, in my game loop, where I want to draw the texture is I want to draw it on my cube. So, I'm just going to go right above where I start drawing it. I'm going to call wood, so the texture, dot bind. And that will bind the texture, and now OpenGL will be drawing with it. That's the first step. Although we're drawing with the texture now, it's still not enough information. We need to show OpenGL how we want to draw the texture, what orientation we want to draw it on, which faces we want to draw it on. We need to tell OpenGL how much of the texture we want to use. So there's a couple things we have to do here. And OpenGL's answer to this is something called Textural Coordinates. Now, I'm pretty sure I talked about these in video 2 of this series, but I'm going to go over them briefly so that you know what I'm talking about when I'm going to use these. But if you want a deeper explanation, you can go look in video 2. I'm pretty sure I explained it there. So, here's how textural coordinates work. I'm just going to open up the texture to show you. So this is a texture. Again, like I said, not the best texture, but it works. Now, what a textural coordinate is essentially OpenGL mapping a number to each corner. So this bottom left corner right here, it's 0, 0. This corner right here, I'm pretty sure is 0, 1. This is 1, 1. And this is 1, 0. And we can use these coordinates to show OpenGL how we want to draw it. So let's say I'm drawing a square. I'd first tell OpenGL, okay, the next vertex I'm going to draw is going to be 0, 0 of the texture. And then I tell OpenGL, okay, this is 0.00 of the square. The next I want to draw this point on the square. Then I say, OpenGL, this is a texture coordinate of the next vertex I'm about to draw. Then I'll draw in that vertex. then again, this vertex, same story. It's tell OpenGL, okay, 1, 1 is a texture coordinate to this vertex. Then I'll draw it. And you get the idea. That's how I use a texture coordinate system. Again, slightly better explanation in video 2. And also, they don't have to be full numbers. I can do 0.6, for example. I'll get me somewhere around here. And then I'll only get, say, this much of the texture. So, that's how textural coordinates work. And now, let's actually use them. So like I said when I was explaining texture coordinates, we need to state the texture coordinate before we draw the vertex. So I'm going to go above this vertex, and since this should be the bottom left corner, I'm going to select the bottom left corner. So the way I'm going to do this, GL text coord 2F. This is OpenGL's texture coordinate method. Now I just put in the coordinate of the texture, so 0, 0. That should be the bottom left corner. Now, I'm just going to do the same thing here and here. But I don't want the bottom left corner of the texture for all of the points, so I'm going to change this up a bit. Here, I'm going up, so I want 0, 1. This should be 1, 1. And this should be 1, 0. And the reason it should be these numbers is because of the way I am drawing the circle. Or, not the circle, I'm drawing the square. This right here should be the bottom left corner, so I'm giving it the bottom left texture coordinate. Now this here, I'm going up, as you can see, so this should be up. Then I'm going left, so I'm going left in texture coordinate, and etc, etc. And just to make this a little bit cleaner, I like doing my texture coordinates like this. And this is debatably cleaner or not, but I like it this way. I think it makes it look nicer, so I'm going to do it like this. And I want the texture coordinates to be laid out pretty much the same way for all the textures, so I'm going to do the exact same thing for every single one. So I'm just going to copy all these. And this is the fun part of drawing all your textures. So to speed this up, hopefully I'm going to do it like this. And we'll see if that ends up being faster or not later. So yeah. And these are all the texture coordinates. Come on. And last one. And there. So, now we have texture coordinates for all of our textures. And unless I'm forgetting something, this should be everything we need to get our cube with textures on it. So, let's go ahead and test. If I hit run, we crash. Why have we crashed? File not found exception, res/wood.jpg. Why can you not find that? One moment. I'm looking for that res. Yes, wood.png. I'm a genius, I know. So change this to PNG in both locations. And now it should work. So now if I hit run, hey, it's working. And I know you might be wondering, well, why are you saying it's working? We don't see any texture. That's because you're not supposed to. By default, textures are disabled in OpenGL. And that's why we can't see any textures. If we want to see textures, we have to enable them. So if I go to my camera class, which is where I'm doing all my OpenGL initialization, and I scroll down to where I'm initializing everything, all I have to do, GL enable, GL, what am I enabling? Texture 2D. And there. Now, if I run, we will see the texture. And there. If you see, we now have the texture. And it's still getting colored because we're still telling it to color itself, but yeah. We get to see our detailed texture all over our cube. Exactly like we wanted it. So yeah, there you go. One of the textures is kind of sideways, but I'm guessing that's just because of the way I laid things out. But I'm actually kind of okay with that. Again, if you want it oriented differently, you just set up the coordinates like you want. But yeah, there you go. That's how you get textures. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned. And if you don't want them colored like this, just take out the GL color methods. But yeah, thank you. And for fun, I'm going to set it back to rotation. just because I want to see it rotate with textures. And there! We now have a rotating textured cube, which actually looks kind of awesome. Even though it's kind of lagging because I'm recording, but that's okay with me. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned, and see you next time.